Hello, how are you doing this week? Welcome back to Series 5.5, Episode 2 of the Public Relations Podcast. I have another fantastic interview for you this week. Pretty much, again, unedited interview, this one, with a PR company who don't just promote other people's ideas, but very much live the product and the brand. And it's really interesting because you can see how that has opened so many doors for them and built such a strong connection with editors and reporters in their space. We also talk about things like agency life. We talk about what it's like being in their particular topic niche's capital in Europe, which is really interesting too. We also talk about AI and where the good reporters are going already, and the fact that it's not just going to be an AI-generated media world as well. But before I click play on it, if you have dropped in on this episode for the first time, or you used to listen to the old series, we are in Series 5.5 at the moment, which is an intermediate series that I'm running before we start Series 6 in the autumn, with an entirely new format for the show. And in Series 6, each week, we're going to have a guest or multiple guests, and them and I are going to be discussing topical PR campaigns, PR moments, and trying to dissect them to get the best ideas from them, from what everyone else is doing around the PR world. Now, we don't know what those topics are going to be yet, of course, but if you would like to be one of those guests, book your week now by going to thepublicrelationspodcast.com, and you want to click on the guest option at the top. Click on guest, go through the blurb down there, make sure that's all going to fit with what you would like to do as well, and then let me know and we can try and book a date in there. Also, don't forget the newsletter too, which is totally free. It rounds up all my thoughts from each episode that comes out every week that the show is running, and there'll be another one this week as well. Again, thepublicrelationspodcast.com, you will see the link on there, just simply to the newsletter. So let's get to this fantastic chat with Jon Woodroof from TwoTone, which you can find their website. Let me spell it for you, actually. It's TwoToneams.nl. So it's two, the word two, then tone, as in like a sound, then AMS, because they're based in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and then .nl. So it's TWOTONEAMS.nl. I will have a link to it, of course, in the newsletter this week as well. And his company specializes in the cycling PR world, in Europe's capital of cycling, Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. It's a fantastic chat going into all areas, as I say, of agency life. Enjoy, and I will have a few more things to say about this after I've played the episode. I've been looking forward to chatting with you because one of the things I love about what you do is that you're not just promoting cycling, you live and breathe it yourself. So you're not just the kind of the classic agency that has a list of 100 different diverse clients. Mm-hmm. You're actually living it.
It's true.
How do you think that changes the way you kind of approach everything?
I think it gives us, and first of all, thank you for having me through an introduction of a former colleague of mine, Guy from Kolbike, who worked here for like 7 years. So thank you, Guy.
Yeah, I've had a great chat with him. This is your moment though, Jon.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I like to start with a little bit of gratitude. Yeah. But as far as the getting back to bikes, because early on we did do projects and had clients that were more like the startup world or software as a service world, and it was quite varied. But when it comes to bikes and the kinds of riding and racing that I do, then when we get into a conversation with a potential customer or a current customer, I don't say, well, I've heard, or some influencer or someone told me how something works. I actually used that product, whether it's like a navigation computer or cycling kits or tires or a tool or a pump or something like that. So it just fundamentally gives us so much more credibility in a conversation with a customer.
Did you feel that real difference? So when you were doing the tech stuff, just literally the conversation, the introductory conversation when you're talking to people, you feel that very different vibe?
I think in that case, and believe it or not, I used to do talks at like conferences and meetups and things about sales process. So we also did sales consulting, and it was just higher level. Like I knew how to do sales, and that is applicable across different industries, but I didn't know about their industry. So it was like removed, or it was just kind of further away. And, we can go on rides with our customers or with the kind of influencers or athletes or editors. Ultimately, like a lot of the relationships that we have with media, we have because we've went on rides with them or trips with them in more of like a friend's capacity. So that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a huge difference from a journalist point of view as well, doesn't it? Because, I remember in the newsroom, the people you want to talk to are the people who are involved in it. You don't want to talk to the PR or the spokesperson. You want to talk to the person who does it. So in your particular case, I was just thinking there, if I was sitting in the newsroom now and I wanted a cycling story, who do I talk to? And it's like, well, of course I'm going to talk to a guy who does it, but also he's in PR, so I know he can communicate. I know he can give me what I need. It's a really good strategy. I think it's just come from reality.
Thank you. And one funny like intermediary piece to this, like we have our newsroom and like we're pitching and like people on the team are contacting media, and that's like a bread and butter kind of function. And then we have like my own like personal rides or whatever I'm doing. Like if you're familiar with Strava, like that shows, or Komoot that shows the routes that I plan. But in between is our newsletter. And that's where like from a personal perspective, I write maybe what I was doing, interesting things that I saw, could be trends or developments in or outside of the cycling industry, and media, clients, potential clients, other people that aren't even necessarily into bikes, maybe they subscribe to our newsletter. And that is that trust building thing. So when you're talking about like media paying attention in a best case scenario, and this, I always reference Seth Godin's like permission marketing. The company that I worked at that merged with another company that brought me to the Netherlands, they were in the same building as MailChimp, and MailChimp used to bring in people like Seth Godin to do like lunch talks.
Right. Yes.
So if they subscribe to our newsletter, they being journalists that we would love to have write about our customers, then we're in like Flynn. Like then they're already drinking our Kool-Aid, and we don't even have to like really push super hard,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing you told me about the other day was about the fact you had music sessions at your offices. Now, okay, a lot of PR is one of the things about PR, isn't it? The parties and all this kind of thing. But in a way, yes, you're having music, but it is for a group of interested people in this topic. Mm-hmm. It's not just to come along because we've got some nice champagne for free.
Yeah,
I think that's very different.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's like being part of a broader community. And even in that case, we call it Docs Under the Tracks. Docs, DOX, being a local jazz label that's like 25 years old, and their founder is into bikes, no surprise, and likes to ride bikes. So we've ridden with him. And Under the Tracks, it references our offices here under the train tracks of Central Station, in a co-working space that I also run called Workspace 6. So that's a jazz label bringing in one of their artists to perform here. We already have get-togethers for the co-working space, and could be friends or colleagues within Two-Tone, our agency, or other people. And it's just kind of, monthly programming to bring people together that doesn't really have like a strategic approach.
You're living it though. That's the point, isn't it? Exactly. But that's it. You're living it. You're not just trying to make this up or pretend.
Yeah, I think it's more.
That's what's so interesting about what you do.
In a sincere way, just like bringing people together, and the space being like a hub, almost like this is maybe too much hyperbole, but like a tourist attraction. Like a friend of mine has a bike shop in Nagoya, Japan, and his friend was coming to the Netherlands. So he gave his friends stuff from Japan. I've got a water bottle here from a bike shop in Nagoya that just showed up while I was away last week. And then we gave him Two-Tone goodies to bring back to his friend in Japan. But when that guy came to Amsterdam, his Instagram post was incredible. It was like the Anne Frank house, the Rijksmuseum, all the canals, all the classics like the houseboats, and then Two-Tone and Workspace 6 was like one of the slides.
It's like the must-do things list now for Amsterdam.
It's incredible. It's something I aspire for. That like anyone that's into bikes that comes to Amsterdam, which is a tall order, should come by our office.
Yeah. Right. Let's talk about your average day. I mean, you're obviously running the agency in this kind of living it way. So how do you see your average day? What do you what makes up your day?
Thank you. I think one of the things that's changed years ago, I would go on about like waking up early and like doing a ride early in the morning. I think I'll get back to that. But like recently, kind of during Corona and since, I'll sleep in. I'll get up in time and like get the kids ready for school, which is like 7, which that's like sleeping in because the rides would start at 6. So I don't really do that as much anymore, but intend to. So then, get up, make breakfast, get the kids out the door for school. It's only like a 15-minute ride to the office. Everything's really close here in Amsterdam. We don't have meetings before 10. This sounds very relaxed because why make it more hectic? A 9 a.m. meeting sounds as bad as it is.
I don't understand people that get up in the morning. I'm sure lots of listeners do.
There's definitely benefits.
I'm sure. I've heard of them. Yeah.
Exactly. On Mondays and Wednesdays, we have a stand up with the whole team, and everybody kind of talks about what they're working on, things they might need help with. There's going to be calls kind of sprinkled throughout the day. There's like weekly client calls. I don't join all of them, but try to join them maybe once a month. And then I have calls or meetings, not unlike this one, that are, relatively random on a week to week basis. The team does have lunch together. Today we'll have lunch at a client's showroom around the corner. Actually, they just announced new colors of their bikes. So we'll go over there. And that's actually a good point, that I try to have those lunches scheduled on a rolling basis. Like a friend of mine's a frame builder, makes custom steel bikes. So every 3 weeks we have lunch at his place. His name is Lester Cycles. So it's lunch at Lester's. And ideally every Wednesday we're having lunch somewhere else. And that's more of like a springtime thing. And then I try to get out of here not that late, maybe like 5 or 6 in the evening to get home for dinner. I think that's a general work day. And then occasionally like random people stop by, back to being,
but also, it's, I've seen on your social media feed, it's not like you're just working, are you? What was it you had the other day? Were you on some small racing bike or something? Bright blue bicycle?
It's possible. I mean, one example, this is where like the work experience like expands beyond like the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
A friend of ours that worked at Patagonia for a number of years, then started to work at an American cycling apparel brand, and he was organizing like a gravel event where like you would ride like mostly off-road, and that was in a town closer to the German border, like east of Amsterdam here in the Netherlands. And it's like, is that work or not? A lot of those people, I've lived here almost 10 years now. I took the train at like 6 a.m. and met up with people that I didn't know on the train. We rode to the start. I did have a puncture on my tire, but it has tubeless, if you know what that is, like the sealant's like spraying everywhere. So I had to like plug the hole. Yeah. Inadvertently like cut my thumb. It was a whole drama. Ended up riding with like other friends that have a cycling apparel store here. They were like hammering. I let them go, and I just went like slow and steady, essentially. It was like raining. It was pretty shitty weather. But I caught them later in the day. It was a 185-kilometer ride. Ouch. And then hung out, had burgers and beers at the end, and then took the train back. And I did make a little 1.5-minute reel, like Instagram video thing on our company account. So maybe that's what you saw. Although the bike I was riding was yellow, not blue, maybe. Or there could have been blue bikes in it. But to me, that genuinely, back to your original point, that is very much work related, but that's something that I would do anyway. If I did this for my job or not. Yeah.
Let's talk about current campaigns, because this will help us understand a little bit about how you approach things as well. What sort of things are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, certainly. If I think off the top of my mind, Ampler is the client that just launched the new colors. They also were effectively acquired in some senses. It's a merger, but a controlling stake was purchased in their company. But they also is an Estonian brand. They're all from Tallinn. And this other firm includes a brand called Co-Module that does a lot of like the firmware and hardware for controlling other e-bike brands. So it's quite a cool strategic merger. So that was kind of like a business investment news thing. But then
what's your sort of hands-on role with that? How have you approached that particular thing at the moment? And is there anything that you've kind of learned from this latest campaign as well? Because PR is always changing, isn't it?
For sure. I think for the Ampler example, there was another client that had like an acquisition story, and then another one that you and I had spoke about before, Classified from Belgium. They had investment, even from the founders of Rafa, you've heard of probably being from England, cycling apparel brand.
I have heard, yeah.
And yeah, that's fine if you're not in the matrix in that sense. But the answer to your question being, we've had a number of these like investment acquisition stories where in each campaign in different markets, we're finding editors that write about these kind of business news things, which is a little bit different than the norm, than someone who's like doing a bike component test or something like that. And all of this has led to us as a team just doubling down on how we use our CRM and tagging contacts more consistently, because over the course of 4 or 6 weeks, we've done similar pitches, which are interesting for those kinds of editors, makes their job easier. I think that's a theme for us. Like, how can we be helpful for them? Not even just how can they help us by writing about our client. So that's led to the whole team using the CRM in a better way, actually.
So do you think it was because you just kind of knew everyone in the past, whereas now because you're expanding that reach into kind of the business side of things, because you haven't got so much of those, it's not like you just kind of go, oh, you know, I must speak to Jim or I must speak to Helen. Precisely. You've actually got to start to systematize it, haven't you?
Totally. And there's been, when you mentioned like things changing, one of the bigger titles in cycling, not a crazy name, Cycling Tips. They're originally from Australia. So you might hear about these guys, but they were acquired by the company that owns Outside Magazine. And they'd kind of consolidated and acquired a lot of outlets that led to a lot of turnover within the team. The original founder, Wade Wallace, who's technically maybe from Canada, but technically Australian. I'm not sure. There's a big Australian connection. Okay. I know that's where you're sitting right now. But at any rate, they just yesterday announced a new title, an online title, but it's going to be subscriber supported as opposed to contingent on like advertising revenue. So from Two-Tone, we bought like a subscription to that. That's something we also like to do for any of the titles that we're pitching, particularly like magazine or paid subscription model ones. We also buy a subscription, but a change within the industry is a lot of the guys that are going to be involved. It's called the Escape Collective is what they're calling it. They left their other things they were doing during or since Cycling Tips to join this. So you saw this, like, I don't know if groundswell is the right word or something, but like if anyone that's paying attention within the industry, they saw all these notable editorial names go to this new title and tons of people on social media, random consumers, agencies like ours, other brands, other editors, people posting that they're excited about this new publication coming together.
And you've got to keep an eye on where these people are going and what they're doing. And also, I guess the thing as well is you've got to see what the new tone is going to be. Presumably they're going to kind of adjust the, you know, because it's the classic, isn't it? Is that you can follow a journalist who works at a paper for 5 years and you go, oh, I've got it. And then they move to another publication and why are they suddenly writing completely differently? Well, they have a different editor. They have a different tone. They have a different audience. It's like, if you forget
I think in this day and age, like if we follow their personal Instagram, if they follow my personal Instagram, if we're LinkedIn connected, or in the case of like Wade and the Escape Collective, if he subscribes to our newsletter and if we're communicating, he and I haven't even like ridden bikes together yet. But we've corresponded. We should. And we've corresponded over the years. So that, I think that's a good example. And then as far as like changes, I think it's just how we operate internally. I think something that we did to incentivize the CRM use, we use Slack for internal communication. We set up Slack channels for all of our clients. Sometimes that's new to the people that we work with, but we set up a channel and invite the customer into the Slack channel and whoever from the team is involved. And there's just kind of a day-by-day run through of what's going on. But we also have a CRM Slack channel. We use Nimble for our CRM. And with Zapier, I set it up that if someone in the team adds a new editor to the CRM, it shows up with a link to their Instagram, their LinkedIn, whatever, in that Slack channel. So anyone who follows that channel can see which colleague added what editors, and you can just click their Instagram, click their LinkedIn, and like scope it out, whether it's BBC, Cycling Tips, bicycling, whatever. And that creates a little bit, I wouldn't say like competition, but like a visible, like running list of like who's contributing. A little bit of a competition. And it's cool because, back to your question about these different editors or, you know, business news writers that we've been contacting, that's useful for a number of people in the team because they're now pitching similar stories and they see those names coming through. There's more transparency.
You just made me think.
Transparency sounds better than competition.
Transparency. It just made me think, okay, a bicycle. Now, they are relatively simple. So, relatively. But so when you're trying to promote a bicycle's new set of colors, how do you pitch it? Because presumably, and okay, I don't know the industry. You're an expert in the industry. But how do you make that exciting when presumably everyone's trying different colors and styles, aren't they?
For sure. Yeah, that one is difficult. I think the strategy there could have been or was to some degree coupling it with the merger acquisition story. But the bigger story with Ampler is they actually produce, like they weld the frames together in Tallinn in Estonia. And a lot of brands, as you may know or would assume, are made in Asia, and then they come over on containers and boats, and there's a whole ecological impact to stuff coming from around the world.
That's the stuff you're pitching to the business press as well, is it? Or is that
for sure?
So I guess the ecological aspect appeals to the cycling market, though.
Guaranteed, yeah, because bikes, or the bike industry often gets like diplomatic community, like, oh, it's bikes, it must be green. Well, if it's e-bikes, then it has the impact of the batteries, what happens to the batteries when they run out. If it's bikes manufactured in Asia, what were the manufacturing conditions and what did it take to get that bike from Asia over here, blah, blah, blah. But in Ampler's case, they're made in Europe and they paint in-house. So they're doing all that stuff like right there, not that far away. And it creates so much more versatility and ultimately is more responsible, or it has less of a ecological impact because they can just put it on a train or on a truck and like ride right over into Germany, and it was like a several hour drive as opposed to a several month voyage. And not a lot of brands.
Yeah, and you've got a strong environmental story there, haven't you? You can put it as well. And the audience are going to like that. It's going to resonate with them.
And you see like bigger trends, like a brand that we haven't worked with, but we spoke with in the past, like Orbea in Spain. They have a collective, like employee-owned approach, which you've heard of also in other industries. They, I don't believe, make their frames in Spain, but I know they do paint them for that same reason, because then they just have a shorter, what's the word, like product loop of being able to do paint in-house or change designs. Whereas if there was a problem in the paint or something they need to update in the design, imagine going back to Taiwan and having to wait for those new ones to come back around. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Onto the kind of, quick fire. I call it the quick fire. It's the topics that keep coming up in discussion. So it's your thoughts on these ones. The first one is managing client expectations, the challenging of making sure that people understand what PR can do and being able to deliver that. How do you approach that topic?
Great question. I think I do it a little bit differently than other people that run agencies that I know. One thing we like to do is like draw a line in the sand of an average number of clippings that we shoot for in a month. Obviously, not every clipping is the same, but I want some kind of like objective number, let's say like 10, which could be like one big story and several little ones or something. And it just gives us like some measure. And I've talked to other people that have agencies like Two-Tone, and they're like, man, why do you do that? And it gives us something to shoot for. Managing expectations, I think we do that in a like iterative way, in a weekly basis. We have a work log where we track what we did last week, what we're going to do the next week, so that in any given week, whether it's through Slack or that call or that work log, we know what we're working on. It might not be specifically around a campaign. It might be around an event or getting influencers or somebody to use a product or something like that. So on a weekly basis, we're managing expectations of what we're trying to accomplish and what we did accomplish the previous week. So when we send our invoice that month, there's no confusion or question what Two-Tone was doing. And 9 times out of 10, everybody feels good about what we were able to do because we had such close
because you've said it from the start as well. You've set a very, very clear expectation, haven't you? Next question. What's AI going to do to PR in your space?
I like this. I saw a meme on LinkedIn about how to get like engagement on LinkedIn. It's like you either talk about AI or like overshare about like your personal life or something like that. There's like
yeah, exactly. It is unbelievable. I mean, even on this podcast, the moment I did a first episode on AI, the listenership on that particular episode just soared. So it's something that people are fascinated by, aren't they? What do you think is going to be the implication?
It's a hot topic. Okay. I don't know. I think I know that I have experimented with it. I did put something in our newsletter about AI, and it was like the Chat GPT. It was like some just like text thing where you could just like ask it. And you could say like, explain how an e-bike works to me. And like, it did it. And it was funny, written in this like this robot way. I mean, the first things that come to mind, certainly nothing that we've considered pursuing right now. But if it's like press release text, copy for a website, those kinds of things for like an initial draft, maybe there's a possibility there. If you could ask some kind of algorithm or some kind of chat bot thing to what are the top titles or what's the top editors, and it's able to like, you know,
I think it's going to get there, yeah.
Those kinds of things. I think there's something interesting there. We do use a tool called mention.com from France, which has some pretty intense search capabilities is one thing that we struggle with internally with the team, because you could just Google things, but with mention, it gets in the direction of not necessarily AI, but Boolean searches, where like if you set all these like parentheses and commas and stuff, you can search for specific things. And I think that AI in a more, like conversational way, obviously, could accomplish those same kinds of searches, because you can describe what you're looking for.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to change journalism as well, though? And the relationship between PR and journalism? Because, we've already heard of particularly in news organizations which are very light. They're really just consolidating the stuff that's out there. We've got AI that's taking over that. So the organizations which are going to be run by humans are going to be the ones that are far more insightful, far more in depth, aren't they? That's my feeling. What do you think?
Well, I have nothing to back this up, but especially using that Escape Collective example just came out in that last day or so. What's going to set that apart is it has like top tier, almost like celebrity level in the cycling industry editors that people not only will pay for, they're excited to pay for.
Yeah,
it even had it had $1,000 lifetime subscriber tier. And I'm telling you, like, people paid that. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Which proves the point. You wouldn't pay that for an AI.
No. And I think the AI stuff, whether it's like Reuters or, random Newswire stuff, or, like a no diss to Quartz, but I get like the Quartz like daily email of, what's going on. That could be prepared by AI. That could be like a fully automated news email that's written in a conversational way that like aggregates news to whatever is, and like, and no person actually has to do that. Exactly. But people will pay for higher brow or more in-depth.
It's the insight, isn't it?
Editorial writing. And then that'll more likely be behind paywalls. One talk that I saw from someone at the New York Times at a conference once is how much of their revenue is from subscriptions, like predominantly. They make most of their money from subscribers, and people are always frustrated with paywalls. But I think people are going to get more used to it because they don't want to read something that arguably may be written by AI.
Yes.
They want to read something from a particular editor or a particular title that they know is real, maybe.
We're very nearly out of time. So very, very quickly, if you had a magic wand and you could solve one problem with PR just as a whole, what would it be?
Magic wands, try to keep it brief. I think what we always run into, and this is classic in our industry, I think in a lot of industries, but maybe it varies. We're trying to get coverage about a thing, a product or something often, and the publication needs to earn a living also. So then they're always interested in advertising, which isn't always the case from our client. And it's like this classic conundrum. So I don't have the silver bullet thing, but if I had a magic wand, I'd want to understand, like, how do we make ourselves helpful to get great content for their readers, but we can't always necessarily help them with the advertising. And maybe that goes back to
one awesome chat with Jon. He's such a friendly guy. He's so open, and we really got a really good insight, I think, talking to him about how his agency works. And I just love the fact that he doesn't just promote ideas. He is living the brand. As I said in there, when I was a news editor for many years, the kind of people we wanted to speak to were the people who were actually doing something, but that could communicate it as well. I remember one of the problems we used to have with science stories in particular is you get a lot of very, very clever scientists that just can't communicate in an easy to understand way. So you would end up going to a PR person that then didn't really understand the science. So they could give you all the lines, but it just didn't really work. So if you then get a scientist and you look at, forgotten his name. Is it Brian Cox? Give me a second while I find his name. This is really annoying me. Yes, there we go. I'm back. It was Brian Cox. In fact, he's doing a whole series of talks in theatres around the world at the moment. He's actually doing it at the Sydney Opera House. He's doing a talk coming up soon. But anyway, the point is that here is someone that knows how to communicate, that is a professor, that understands physics, and is able to do that really well. That makes him incredibly usable if I was a news editor or a journalist trying to do that kind of story. Right, like I say, if you want to get the newsletter, round up some of the thoughts on this week, it is thepublicrelationspodcast.com, and then just click on the newsletter link there. Also, if you're on the waiting list for the Public Relations Podcast Project, I'll have an email for you soon as well. You can find details about that on the website too. And next week, I'm going to be talking to a public relations recruiter. Now, if you are well established and you've been in the game for a long time, bear with me, because the chat is a real insight into where the PR industry is going. It's a really good insight looking into the future. So if you're getting into PR as well, obviously, pretty obvious should be a good one for you too. There is so much more I want to say, but I know you have a day to get on with. So have an awesome week, and let's chat next week. Oh, you can reach me on LinkedIn as well, by the way. If you want to reach out to me, I am under the name Richard Midson, Midson. Have a good one.